Hello Algebra 1. Today we are going to be doing some review for our second quiz on quadratic formula and vertical motion models. So here we go. All right, the first thing we're going to do for numbers 1 and 2 is we're going to put our equations in standard form. And remember, standard form looks like this: ax squared plus bx plus c, and then we're going to have an equals 0 at the end. So in number 11, the big thing here, or excuse me, number 1, the big thing here is you have this 11, okay? We do need to have an equal 0, so we will subtract our 11 over and then bring everything down. Negative 7 minus 11 is negative 18 equals 0. All right, so that's just going to be our answer for number 1. Now, for number 2, we have a couple things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is move our 13x over to the other side. So again, we'll subtract that, but also we need to make sure everything is in the correct order. So remember, we want x squared and then x and then our number. Your x squared is negative. Your 13x is also negative. That needs to go in the middle, and then your 8 is a positive. So that will go at the end and then equals 0. Okay, and here is your standard form. All right, next we're going to practice evaluating before actually doing quadratic formula. So when we take this, we're going to type it into our calculator, and we do need to type this in twice, once with a plus and once with a minus. So we'll start with a plus, 7 plus. To get our square root, we'll do second, and then it's the x squared button, 18, then we'll press enter, and then divide by 5. Make sure you press enter first. We'll round to the nearest hundredth, so this will be 2.25. And now we'll do the exact same thing again, except this time we need to do a minus. 7 minus square root 18, enter, don't forget to divide by 5. Nearest hundredth, again, is 2 numbers after the decimal, 0.55. All right, moving on, we're going to evaluate the discriminant. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. It's also what we know as what's underneath the square root. And once we evaluate that discriminant, we're going to identify how many solutions it has. Now remember, you don't have to do full quadratic formula here. We just need to identify our a value, which is always with our x squared, our b value, which is with our x, and our c value is your number, and then we're just going to plug them into this formula. Make sure you put your b value in parentheses, minus 4, my a value is negative 3, and my c value is 14, and then we're just going to type this into our calculator. Oops, all right, let's try that again. Really make sure that you're going slowly and that you actually type in everything that you're supposed to. Don't lose any of your negatives or anything like that. And before you press enter, just check that this is the way you want it. And we get 268. All right, so again, this is our discriminant. Now here's what this means. Since this is a positive value, when we have a positive value underneath our square root, that means we're going to have 2 solutions. If you graph this with your calculator, you would also see it hits the x-axis 2 times. All right, now number 5, we have to be careful. We can't evaluate the discriminant until we are in standard form. So just like we did above for number 1 and 2, we are going to have to subtract this 5x over first. And since it's the x term, it should go in the middle. This is representing our b value. Okay, it doesn't combine with anything because there aren't any more x's. So I now have an a value of 2, a b value of negative 5, and a c value of 10. All right, and now I'm ready to go ahead and plug in b squared minus 4ac. So my b value is negative 5. Again, make sure it's in parentheses. Squared minus 4. My a value is 2. And my c value is 10. And then we'll just go ahead and type that in. Yes, you need to have the parentheses. All right, like so. Enter, and we get a negative 55. All right, so this is our discriminant, and again, this is what's going to be underneath the square root. Since it's underneath the square root and we can't take the square root of a negative, we call this no solution. So there are 0 solutions. All right, before we get to quadratic formula, this one is multiple choice. It's kind of a gateway into our full quadratic formula. So again, first we're going to identify our a value, which is 2. Our b value is -8, and our c value is -5. And now we'll go ahead and we will plug in our numbers. So it's x equals opposite b. Since b is a -8, this becomes a +8. Plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4. My a value is 2 and my c value is -5 all over 2a. And then what I would do next if I was solving was calculate my discriminant. Again, when you do this, you're not typing in the square root. This is basically the same as what we did above. All right, and that gives us a 24. Oh, you know what? I put in a -2. Let's try it again. This is why we always have to check what we've typed in. That was a learning moment for us. All right, there we go, 104. All right, so I should have an x equals 8 plus or minus square root 104. 2 times 2 is 4. And now we're just going to find that answer. And I need the 8 to be positive, so be careful. It should be A. All right, now we're going to do quadratic formula all out. So again, first thing, make sure you're in standard form, which we are for number 7. And since we're in standard form, we can go ahead and identify our A, B, and C value. And your A value is just going to be a 1. Our B value is 7, and our C value is -11. So again, we're going to start off by just plugging in our numbers, just like we did on the problem above. X equals opposite of B, so a -7, plus or minus square root of B squared, minus 4, my A is 1, my C is -11, all over 2, my A is 1. All right, so that's our next step. Next step after that is calculate that discriminant again. Do not plug it into your, or do not plug the square root into your calculator, just the numbers underneath the square root. Let's see if I can plug it in correctly this time. All right, that looks right. Okay, so 93, and then we're just going to bring everything else down. And 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so in the last problem, we just circled our answer, but what we're going to do is keep going, and now we're going to find answers to the nearest hundredth. So this is where we type it in twice, -7 plus square root 93. Make sure you press enter. Don't forget to divide by 2. So 1.32 is our first answer, or now we type it in again, -7 minus square root 93. Oop. There we go. Enter. Divide by 2. -8.32. And again, these are representing your x-intercepts where your parabola hits the x-axis. All right, let's do one more like this, and be careful with number 8 because you should notice this is not in standard form. So what we need to do first is add our 256 over, and since that's just a regular number, that's our C value. It's going to go at the end, and then we'll have our equal 0. All right, so once again, our A value is just a 1. Our B value is a -32, and our C value is a 256. All right, here we go. X equals opposite B, so this time it's a +32. Plus or minus square root of B squared, make sure you have those parentheses please, minus 4, my A value is 1, and my C value is 256. All over 2, my A value is 1. All right, once again, once you plug the numbers in, now we're going to find the discriminant. Do not type in the square root yet. All right, that looks good. And we get a 0. All right, now remember, anytime you get a square root of 0, what this means is you're only going to have one solution. If you still want to type it in twice, you can, but you're going to get the same thing both times. I'll do my 2 times 1 is 2 there. So look, I'll show you 32 plus square root 0, enter, divide by 2. So here's my first answer. And if I do this a second time and use subtraction, notice I still get 16. Don't list the 16 twice, just say x is 16. This is one solution. This will always happen when your discriminant is 0. All right, the final thing we're going to talk about are our vertical motion models. Here you have your drop and your throw equations. During halftime of a basketball game, a slingshot launches t-shirts at the crowd. A t-shirt is launched at 5 feet above the ground. This launched, it's telling you that's where it's starting at, with an initial upward velocity of 72 feet per second. Okay, upward meaning positive. And the t-shirt is caught at 35 feet above the court. Okay, caught, so that's where the ending height is. All right, so since this has velocity, we're going to use this formula right here. Your h value is 35 equals negative 16t squared plus v velocity is 72. Don't forget that it has a t as well, plus your starting height is 5. And now this is something that we're just going to go ahead and graph. So go to our y equals, put your 35 in y1, and we'll plug everything else into y2. Make sure that you have 72x. A lot of times people forget about that second x. And remember, we do need to change our window to something a little bigger than the biggest number in our problem. I'm just going to do a quick zoom 6. Okay, so my y max needs to be bigger than 35, so I'm going to go with like 50. Oh, actually, I mean, if we're going to go with the rule, bigger than the biggest number in the problem is 72. So I guess I'll go with 100. Okay, so there is your graph, and then we can go ahead and graph it. Okay, and we have 2 intersection points. We're going to find both of them. Again, your teacher may only want you to find one of them, but I'm just going to find both. So first one is 0.46, comma 35. And then we'll do second trace 5 again. Make sure you move your cursor over, otherwise you're going to get that second intersection or first intersection point a second time. 4.04, watch your rounding there. This question is asking how long does it travel in the air for? So they aren't clear about whether we're catching this on the way up or the way down. So I'm just going to put both times, either 0.46 or 4.04 seconds, since both are positive. If we were catching it on the way down, it would for sure be the 4.04, but since the problem doesn't specify, it could be either of these. All right, next, the Willis Tower is 1,450 feet tall. If you were to drop a penny from the top of the tower, how long would it take to reach the ground? Okay, so we're dropping the penny from the top of the tower. That makes this my starting height. And remember, when we reach the ground, that's going to be my ending height, which is just a 0. Since there is no velocity here, we are using the equation that does not have a velocity. It's a squared. All right, so our end height is 0, we'll plug that in. And our starting height is 1,450. And again, we're just going to graph this. So y1 is 0, and y2 is everything else. And window, we need bigger than 1450, so I'm going to go with like 1500. That seems good. And graph. And oh wow, that's very large. So once again, your teacher may only make you find the positive intersection point, but I'm going to find both. So this first one over here is 9.52, comma 0. And if I do the other one, again, this is just second trace 5. If you are finding the other intersection point though, you do have to move your cursor over before you press enter, enter, enter. Otherwise, it's gonna just give you the same one over again. And eventually mine will move over. Okay, good enough. Enter, enter, enter. Notice it's just the negative version. That only happens when you have a drop problem. And again, time can only be positive, so our final answer would be 9.52 seconds. All right, last one. Kamara throws a granola bar up to her brother Tyler. Tyler is in a treehouse 30 feet high. Okay, so Kamara is throwing the granola bar. It's going to end up at Tyler. So this 30, this is our end height. Kamara releases the granola bar at a height of 4 feet. Releases, meaning that's when it leaves her hand. That would be our starting height with an upward velocity of 10 feet per second. Okay, that's our velocity. And oh, the equation that models the situation is this. Look at that. All right, I didn't even have to label those because it gave me my equation. Does the granola bar reach Tyler? Okay, so answer yes or no and explain how you can tell from the graph. So this one we just need to go ahead and graph it, and then we'll see if the granola bar reaches him. Okay, so negative 16 x squared plus, I think it was a 10x. Yep, plus 4. And my window, 1500 is a little much. 30 I think was the biggest number, so I'm going to go with 50. And oh wow, well this is pretty clear. What do you think? Since your parabola is not even close to your line, this is going to be a no. Okay, so Tyler's not going to get the granola bar, and the reason is the parabola does not hit the line. So Tyler's going to have to come down out of that tree if he wants to get that granola bar. All right, there you go. That was your review for your quiz. And if you have any questions, please reach out to your teacher. Have a great day. Bye.